Welcome back to the second half of the show. Throughout the 6 years, I've been focusing on a lot of bullying. And really, 2 stories caught my eye. 3 stories actually caught my eye. This one. This is from GPB. A West Georgia teen died by suicide. Now his mom is speaking out to help others. This was just yesterday. Authorities are still piecing together the days and weeks leading up to that suicide of a 15-year-old student in West Georgia. The name is Austin McIntyre. He killed himself after he reported he was being bullied at his school. His mother Lisa said that the first sign that someone was bothering him, Austin came 2 days before the fatal gunshot on Sunday, November 6th. That was weeks ago. That Friday, he claimed to be sick, but didn't want to go to school. But upon further questioning, Austin admitted there was something else. Austin told his mother that the other students punched him in a game of flinching. They also pulled out his pants in a game of pantsing. His mom says that she called administrators who pulled video evidence of the bullying and suspended 1 student. That Saturday, Austin opened up more about his feelings. They went for a walk with his dog and had a normal Saturday evening, and she said. Then on Sunday, Lisa went into work and later called Austin to tell him that she loved him. It was their last conversation. She said she knew her son was gone, and she would see several phone messages from the sheriff's office, rushed home and saw Dennis in the driveway. She's now talking to others about what happened to spread the message about being compassionate to others and reaching out for help when you need it. If you are experiencing depression or suicidal thoughts, there is help available. The school superintendent referred questions about Austin to the county sheriff, who is now returned the phone message, and the investigation is still ongoing, and we'll keep you up to speed here. Now a bullying story that really shook my nerve here. This is a story about Wyoming parents who say their son was cut in the face. In the face. Really? In the face. Like really, all in the face. Take a look.
As he was slashed multiple times.
The minute boots hit ground, the fight started.
Danielle Nevius describing the November 1st fight that left her son Liam Berman with cuts on his face and neck, allegedly from a pair of scissors. Liam says for the past 2 years he's been bullied by 2 boys who go to his school. That day, the family says, those same 2 boys were responsible for starting an altercation on the bus. Liam did engage in that altercation, and when he got off of the bus, he says one of the boys tried to hit him. When he missed, they said he tried again, this time making contact with Berman.
He grabbed me. I pushed him onto the ground because he was grabbing my arm, and he tripped me. I think he grabbed the scissors about then, and I was basically on him. Then he started slashing right here, and then through twice here.
Those cuts can't be seen in these photos. Marty Ruiz says her grandson has also been bullied by the same boys.
Pushed him down, kicked him, but it's like, it's at the bus stop, there's nothing we can do.
She says she heard about the incident with Liam, not from the district, but word of mouth.
We should have, as parents, guardians, should have been told that there was an incident. They didn't have to give names, but we should have been informed that there was an incident.
Danielle wants to see more done by the school district to keep kids safe from bullying and to prevent incidents like what happened to her son from happening again. She spoke at the Wyoming School Board meeting on Monday.
Mandatory for every single employee before they're allowed around our children. They need to know how to keep them safe. And some form of escalating punishment structure for bullying, especially when it's reported by multiple students.
We also reached out to Craig Hoekstra, superintendent of Wyoming Public Schools, for comment. He gave us this statement. Federal law prohibits the district from sharing the details of student discipline with you. Wyoming Public Schools takes unsafe behavior and allegations of bullying very seriously. All such allegations and incidents are investigated thoroughly, and those involved are held accountable in accordance with board policy.
Danielle said that Liam was suspended for 5 days for his involvement in that fight. She adds that the school district told her the two boys will be seeking alternative education and will not be returning to that physical school. We also reached out to the Wyoming Police Department after Danielle said she filed a police report. They couldn't share any details because these boys are minors. However, they did say that there is an open case on the matter. Juliet?
Micah, thank you.
Now here's my two takes on these two stories. For the first one, I think she has a case if she decides to sue the school district. If she decides to sue the school district, this may be a case that they could be responsible for what happened. So, and as for this story, I'm glad that student got the punishment. But what about the bus? Where was the bus driver in all this? He was busy driving. He could have pulled over, saw what was going on. And if he would have done that and stopped it, bam. No cuts on the face. Off the bus. Done. Well, understand that riding the bus is a privilege, not a right. Racial bullying is happening. You're going to meet an 11-year-old who was being bullied because of the color of her skin when we return. Then later, you're going to be a man who took on the mob, who joined the mob, but then decided to take on the mob, along with those videotapes, taking on the mob. Stay with us. Now a story that will touch any parent's heart. It's a story about an 11-year-old being racially bullied because of the color of her skin. What you're about to hear will be very sad. But as you watch, think about your children being picked on.
Renee, you're right. This is certainly a heartbreaker. We are told that the mother of that middle school student is meeting with school administrators to try to figure out what can be done about this bullying that the student says she has been dealing with the entire semester so far. Again, all over her skin color. Donetta Hooper got a text from her 11-year-old daughter.
Here's a text message that said, "Mommy, can I please switch schools? Everyone keeps making fun of my skin color or the way I look. And then people keep making jokes about me saying I'm from Africa because I'm super black. And they say I stayed in the oven for too long because I'm basically the color of burnt. And they won't even stop. Even if they're two and they think it's funny when it's not their thing. I can change my skin color."
Delea, she wanted to switch schools because of how she was being treated by other students because of her dark skin. The girl says students at Riverwood Middle made jokes saying she was from Africa and that she was the color of burnt. Delea says the bullying has been going on all semester. Her mother posted those messages to Facebook where it was shared thousands of times. Officials with Johnston County Public Schools tell me they are actively looking into this situation. Donetta Hooper says school leaders initially suggested that her daughter...
Now, this is what Donetta Hooper posted. "I was at work today when I received a text message from my 11-year-old child. My heart sank. I immediately told my coworkers I had to go. Months ago, I brought this to the administrator's attention and they said, we will handle it. Well, you didn't. So I had to go by the school in person. One thing that won't happen is my child growing up and hating any part of her. She's beautiful, smart, and vibrant little girl. She's a beautiful, smart, and vibrant little girl. I would not allow anyone to dim her light. I had talked with the counselor because the administrators couldn't take time out of their day to speak to me. A second officer overheard the secretary speaking to one of them, and he asked if I had an appointment, so they sent me to a counselor. I don't care who I speak to, so let this be their notice. You handle it before I handle it. The first time it happened, I told my child to tell the teacher. They did nothing. Second time, I called and spoke to an administrator. She told me she would have my child speak to a counselor. What about the bully? Now to show up in person. My child will not grow up hating the skin she is in. I feel a pain because I grew up with people teasing me about my complexion. So my friends on Facebook right now, you know who you are. I heard darky, blackie, etc. Thank God I survived it back then. Words hurt.
Leave classes early to avoid the bullying or register for other courses. Hooper says her daughter should not have to change because she is the victim here. I asked psychotherapist Dr. Kamala Uzel about how things should be handled in this situation.
initially, you need to address the bullies and the bullying. So if anyone needs to be removed from a classroom, it should be the people who were doing the wrong thing, not the person who was doing the right thing.
Again, the mother is meeting with the school administrators to try to see what can be done to help this little girl. We're still waiting to hear on what resolution, if any, that they have come to. As heartbreaking, Renee, as this story is, it has also been incredibly uplifting. After those messages were posted online, there was a lot of love that was coming in this little girl's direction, including from some of our WRAL viewers. After we posted this story to Facebook, our viewers shared messages to lift up this little girl. They say Delia is beautiful and what happened to her is wrong. One person even commenting that there should be classes to teach all students about the harm that bullying could do. Some people who...
Exactly. There needs to be classes. And here's my take on this with an old clip from an old show called The Boondocks. Take a look at a portion of the tape.
How many people...
So here's a portion.
I know some of y'all here today because y'all think jail is cool. But see, y'all wouldn't know nothing about that. Ain't cool about jail, nigga. Ain't nothing cool. I've been here 10 years, and I ain't never getting out. Never. I ain't do much, just kill somebody. It ain't like the nigga ain't have it coming. He sure did. So y'all think it's just about us in here, but this is about an oppressive system designed to keep niggas down, and y'all wouldn't know nothing about that. What about you, little nigga? You know about that?
Yes.
Oh, you know about that? Tell me what you know about that. Tell me what you think about that.
The prison industrial complex is a system situated at the intersection of government and private interests. It uses prisons as a solution to social, political, and economic problems. It includes human rights violations, the death penalty, slave labor, policing, courts, the media, political prisoners, and the elimination of dissent.
Nigga, did you just say what I was trying to say, but smarter? I like this little nigga, but you left one thing out, little nigga.
That was a portion. But what we need is a Scared Straight program for the bullies and for the troubled students. A Scared Straight program. What that means is we take them on a bus, we put them in jail and it'd be an after school program. We put them in jail for like a few hours, and then what would happen is we're gonna get a taste of what it's like in there. No Xboxes, no video games, no TV, no privacy. You're sitting in there, and then you're sitting in jail, and you're realizing, okay, this is what I should have done in the first place. That's the whole beauty of it. You're sitting in there, and you're thinking about what you did. It's like a child on timeout. He thinks about what he did. He did something wrong, and he needs to think about it. I feel it's the same way for every student. For troubled students and for troubled teens. Like that Paradise Code that I showed you about troubled teens. That's very similar to what needs to happen. So yeah, I think that's a good situation. That's a good solution for the bullies and the troubled students. They need to be scared straight. And if programs like this are allowed in many schools, they would get the message. They look at this and go, you know what? If I end up here, you say, hey, if I continue doing this, this is where I'm going to end up. And I don't want to end up here. I want to be a good student. I want to succeed. I want to be a good member of this community. And your child will be once he or she follows the rules, starts going to school, and stops picking on people, and stops teasing on them. That's the bottom line here. You've heard about people who took on the mob and have gotten killed. Many stories about that. Up next, you're going to meet a man who tried to take on the mob, and then he knew he was going to be killed. He spoke to Rob Steimer back in 1998, and you're also going to hear those videotapes that had happened. Plus, a high school threat that happened. A high school student was arrested for making that threat. We'll have that for you coming up. Stay with us. Real quick before we get to that mob story, there has been another threat that happened a week ago. That was right before Thanksgiving break. That was almost a week ago. Take a look at this.
Well, that student was arrested today, but this was an investigation that actually started on Friday, the last day of school before the Thanksgiving break. We're told that student was suspended from school that day. And then later on, according to deputies, the student sent threatening messages using the district's Focus messaging system. 10 staff members were targeted, including teachers, guidance counselors, and support staff. All of them were sent messages from this student who deputies say threatened to harm them, their families, and the campus. Now, we reached out to the school district for comment on the investigation, and they released the following statement that reads in part, "We have been working closely with the Indian River County Sheriff's Office since these threats were discovered and are proud of their quick action and thorough investigation. As a reminder, we have zero tolerance for threats of harm made against any of our students, faculty, and/or schools, and any and all threats will be thoroughly investigated and prosecuted accordingly." Now, at this hour, deputies have yet to identify the student, and it's still unclear what led to that initial suspension. Once we learn more, we'll be sure to pass those details along to you. For now, reporting...
And I'll be sure to pass those details along with you. Once you join the mob, you may be killed if you leave. You're about to meet a man who probably did such the right thing. But wait till you see those tapes that he made. And you may be the judge of what happened. Now, I want to clarify this. I once saw this on YouTube, and then it got taken down. Then I got a physical copy on eBay for a very good price. And by the way, it's the VHS. So, yeah. I know parts of the story, I may remember it, but, here's Rob Stafford.
The sound of gangland murder still rings in Bill Jehota's ears.
I believe I heard his death rattle on that staircase. And I literally froze. I was just petrified by the horror of it.
It was the first mob killing Jehota says he was involved in, but it wasn't the last. And that's not the only burden he carries. The word on the street is there's a contract on his life. His crime, turning against the mob.
I knew that as an act of conscience, that it's about time I changed my life around and start cooperating with the government.
This is a story about money and murder, of how one man's crisis of conscience led him on a journey that would bring down the Chicago mob. And like a story about the famous mobster Al Capone, it begins in Cicero, Illinois, a center of mob influence in days past, and Bill Jehota's hometown. Growing up here, Jehota was a clean-cut kid, not someone you'd expect to get involved in murder. After high school, he became a salesman at Sears, and later a newspaper reporter, fulfilling a lifelong dream. But Jehota saw friends making a lot more as bookies. And by the time he turned 30, the temptation of quick money was too much. When assigned a story on a group of card cheats known as scufflers, Jehota not only interviewed them, he joined them.
I find myself making large money as part of this scuffling group because I'm now part of the team.
And you got hooked.
Oh, I like the money, sure.
Jehota's dream of being a reporter fell by the wayside, replaced by the allure of easy money, high living, and life as a card shark and bookmaker for the mob. 4 years later, in 1979, he grabbed the chance to make millions, joining forces with this man, Rocky M. Felice, a tough career criminal who just served 6 years in prison and was taking over as the boss of one of the Chicago crime syndicate's street crews.
Rocky had a very vicious background. The crew he used to hang with in the 50s, they traveled the country with machine guns robbing banks.
Were you intimidated by that?
I was a little bit daunting. Rocky and Felice was the most intimidating man I'd ever met in my life.
Jehota says he was only interested in the entertainment side of the business, cards, dice, and bookmaking. And business was good. He says he handled more than $20 million a year in betting action and pocketed more than $300,000 a year for himself.
Tax-free. Yeah, exactly.
What'd you do with it all?
I spent some of it on cocktails, Cadillacs, chorus girls. The rest of it I wasted.
Jehota had one serious brush with the law in 1980. He spent a year in prison for tax evasion. His marriage fell apart. But the day Jehoda returned to the streets, he was back with the mob. The lure of fast cash seemed to be his only concern until May of 1982. Jehoda was running an illegal casino in a suburban mansion. He says his crew boss Rocky told him to lure a rival bookmaker here before business opened for the day.
He says lead him through the house, and when he's confronted, I'm supposed to keep walking.
You had to know at that point it was a hit.
No, never in my wildest imagination do I dream he's there to get killed. It's easier to kill this guy in his driveway.
But as Jehoda led the bookmaker upstairs, he sensed something was about to happen.
I heard a boom, like a slamming door or something.
Right behind you.
Behind me.
Then there was a scuffle, a flash of light, and the terrifying sound of a man choking.
And it was at that point that I heard his death rattle.
The sound of death.
Yeah. And I'll be haunted by that sound. I'll certainly never forget it as long as I live.
Jehoda had seen people roughed up, but never killed. He now realized being a bookmaker in Chicago could be deadly, and hoped he would never be asked to set up someone again. But 3 years later, that painful history would repeat itself. This time the target was Hal Smith, the largest independent bookmaker in the United States. Smith refused to pay the mob thousands of dollars a month, the so-called street tax, the price of doing business. It was then that Jehoda says Rocky told him to lead the bookmaker into a trap. Why didn't you say no?
Rocky's not the sort of guy you challenge.
So Jehoda arranged to meet the independent bookmaker at this neighborhood tavern, and then invited him back to his house, supposedly to meet some women. You know you're leading Hal Smith into a trap. What's going through your mind?
I'm really hoping that he gets out of this thing okay.
When they arrived at his house, Jehoda told Smith to go inside and he'd be along in a minute. Jehoda turned and watched Smith open the door into the kitchen.
As Smith passed through the door area, I could see behind him one of the killers, ultimate killers dressed in black.
By the time Jehoda went in, he knew Smith was doomed. He found him on the kitchen floor, surrounded by Rocky's men.
I was outraged, and I have to tell you, I felt extreme pity for that man.
Jehoda didn't stick around. He says Rocky dropped him off back at the tavern. Jehoda missed the bloodshed, but there was no escape from what had happened.
So I didn't sleep. I was up all night.
What were you thinking?
I felt a tremendous amount of guilt. I felt a little stupid. I also felt a tremendous amount of jeopardy.
You lured him to his death.
Yes, I did.
Smith was found in the trunk of his car at a hotel 4 days later. The independent bookmaker had been tortured and strangled. Jehoda left for a vacation in Mexico and was nowhere to be found.
I knew that Jehoda was involved to some extent.
Tom Moriarty was a 33-year-old agent with the Criminal Investigation Division of the Internal Revenue Service, the same division that brought down Al Capone in the 1930s. Images of Capone and the mob weren't romantic to this Chicago-born agent, but stains on the city that he wanted to wipe out. It was Moriarty who questioned Jehoda when he returned from Mexico. Did you think Jehoda had murdered Hal Smith?
No, Hal Smith was tortured in a way that I had never seen before. And I knew Bill Jehoda did not have the stomach for that.
Moriarty met Jehoda years before during gambling raids at his house and sensed something different. He felt Jehoda was no ordinary street thug, but rather a candidate to turn against the mob.
Periodically, I would go see Jehoda, and I would try to pitch him that things were getting worse, that he could be the next one, that got to give him more talent to do something else. But Bill had a lot of sales resistance, and he didn't buy it.
I told him, I said, I would rather be shot dead on the street right now than cooperate with the IRS. Then they turned the pitch around. Well, they're going to indict me now and give me 20 years. I said, let's go. I'm free tomorrow. Let's start the trial tomorrow.
You were not intimidated by Tom Moriarty?
No, not a bit. But I was impressed by him. I was impressed by his tenacity.
For 3.5 years, Moriarty repeatedly pitched Jehoda to turn against the mob. Each time, Jehoda refused. But in late 1988, there was a change, a mob shakeup. This man, Solly De Laurentiis, became Jehoda's new crew boss. Jehoda thought Solly was a hothead who carried too many grudges.
I know he's going to start a reign of terror. And I know he's going to come to me at some level for help. And I know I'm going to refuse. I know I'm going to refuse. I'm not doing this for the third time, period, under any circumstance.
A few months later, Tom Moriarty got the call of his career. Bill Jehoda, the man Moriarty had worked on for years to turn against the mob, suddenly wanted to meet at a suburban hotel.
My thinking is hopefully to get him alone. And if he hits me hard to flip, I'm going to start cooperating with him.
And Moriarty applied the pressure over breakfast, and then as they walked into the parking lot.
And I could see that this was beginning to bother him, the lifestyle that he had led. And I kept up the pressure, and I told him that, Bill, we can bring the mob down with you.
What did he say to you?
He says, I can't do this, I can't do this. You don't understand, you don't understand. He says, if I see him talking to you, I'm a dead man. And I says, Bill, we can protect you. Trust me on this. He says, I'll do it.
It was a crucial turning point for the feds. Finally, they had a man on the inside, someone who hadn't been indicted, someone still trusted by top mobsters. Bill Jehoda was not your typical informant. Even though there was no evidence against him, he confessed to his role in the two bookmaker murders. And he did all this without any guarantee of immunity. Just a hope that in the end, he would be treated fairly.
I felt I had a debt to pay to society, and I had to start someplace, and I might as well start right there.
So Bill Jehoda was about to go undercover against the mob. You've got to be just scared.
I was afraid of getting caught, of getting detected.
Because he knew all too well what happens to those who betray the mob.
When we come back, you're going to see those tapes. And you're going to hear the other side of the story. Stay with us. Bill Jehoda, who is now a mob, has agreed with the investigator to go undercover to bring down the mob. How will he do it? You're going to see some undercover tapes. Once again, here's Rob Stafford.
$1 million season, gentlemen.
You are looking at mobsters toasting their expected profits in 1989. On the right, two men who run the Chicago crime syndicate's largest gambling operation. On the left, top mob bookmaker Bill Jehoda. Only Jehoda knows he is working undercover for the feds. Only Jehoda knows everything is being captured on tape.
We had two hidden cameras, one of them ingeniously put into a television set, the second one coming out of a lamp.
When they're on the street collecting.
And these weren't just home videos. The feds put cameras in many places, at hotels, even the golf course. And Jehoda wore a wire whenever he met with top mobsters like his old partner, Rocky Infelice. Now the underboss, the heir apparent to the Chicago crime syndicate's top job. If Rocky had caught you wearing a wire, what would have happened?
He'd have murdered me on the spot, even if he knew he was surrounded by federal agents.
He was just winging it, and he was out there on his own without a net.
U.S. Attorney Mitchell Mars poured over hundreds of hours of the undercover tapes gathered by Jehoda, hoping they would be instrumental in court. What did all these surveillance tapes tell you about the Chicago mob?
The breadth of the criminal activities that this crew was involved in.
It was all caught on tape. Mobsters talking about bribing public officials.
Sheriff never bothers us these days, and we got a guy that's facing 30 of them. We got another guy downtown.
Loan sharking.
Some guy wanted about 50,000.
And extortion.
They tried to see if I had anything to do with it. I was too busy with the gambling and extortion.
After 5 grueling months, the feds had more than they ever imagined. Enough evidence to convict Rocky and his men of gambling, extortion, and other crimes. But they could be back on the street in 5 years. The feds wanted to put the underboss and his crew away for life. But to bring down the mob, Bill Jehoda would have to bring up a dangerous topic, the bookmaker killings. Lead agent Tom Moriarty told Jehoda he would have to trick his bosses into confessing to murder on tape.
Jehoda had assured us, once he brings up the murder part, that they might begin to think that he's a weak link, and then he would be killed.
It's against all of the policies to discuss murders.
So they invented a story about a corrupt cop, an officer Friendly, who was supposedly leaking Jehoda a list of clues agents had gathered during the murder investigation.
And I would take this list and show it to Rocky Infelice, trying to get him to comment or respond or react.
You can hear the tension in Jehoda's voice the first time he called Rocky to tell him about the officer-friendly information.
I've got something for your eyes and your ears only. I don't even want to carry it, to tell you the truth. Who's the concern? A little bit of everybody, a lot of stuff that I don't even know about. That's officer-friendly.
Jehoda tried to talk the underboss into coming to his wired apartment on the 41st floor of this luxury high-rise. Moriarty and his agents were in another unit right next door. But Rocky demanded Jehoda pay him respect and come to him.
Get over here. Right now. If you don't get over here, you'll forget about everything. You hear what I said? You ain't got nothing going for you.
What does he mean by that?
He's either going to terminate my business, he's going to throw me off the 41st floor balcony. I've got to get over my own apprehension here about talking about this sort of a thing.
Jehoda composed himself and met Rocky in a parking lot to give him the phony list of clues. The underboss dismissed the information, but pressed Jehoda on how he'd gotten it. Then, a few days later, a frightening call. Rocky phoned Jehoda to say he and another mob boss were on their way to Jehoda's apartment.
I'm concerned because I'm off the script, and I don't know what in the hell this could possibly be.
Do you think they're going there to kill Jehoda?
This is a hit.
Only 2 agents were next door in the security apartment. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Moriarty was at home in the suburbs, more than 20 minutes away. He jumped in the car and hit the gas and siren. What was the plan?
We had shotguns in the apartment, and what one of the agents was instructed to do was to blow the windows out of Jehoda's apartment to distract him while I went in.
Moriarty's men put a couch in front of the balcony door to make it harder to throw Jehoda over the side. When Moriarty arrived at Jehoda's apartment building, the mobsters were already there, and they had moved the couch and gone out onto the balcony. But Rocky didn't attack. He talked business instead. Watching through a camera hidden in the TV set, Moriarty thought Jehoda looked white with fear. Finally, a chance to get Rocky talking about murder on tape, but Jehoda seemed too frightened to act. So despite the danger, Moriarty took an extraordinary risk. He phoned Jehoda and interrupted his meeting with Rocky.
And I tell him, we're here, nothing's going to happen. Gather your wits about you and do it.
Jehoda is very nervous.
Right.
And here you are on the phone, pushing him to get the evidence.
I have to. This is it. This is the 7th game of the World Series. This is no tomorrow. He has to go for it.
Bolstered by the call, Jehoda brought up the murders. But Rocky wanted to talk in a back bedroom, one of the few places that wasn't wired. Desperate to get something on tape, Jehoda led him back to the living room to talk about the murder of the bookmaker Smith.
I don't know, it wasn't there. You know what I mean? I had plenty to worry about when I got back there.
Rocky's got you up against the wall. He's pointing at your chest. What is he saying?
He's explaining to me the route of the car, that it went from that joint to this joint to that joint. He's saying that the law enforcement ain't got nothing.
And he's just implicated himself in the murder of Hal Smith.
That's correct.
There was only one problem. The foyer wasn't wired either. There was no recording of what Rocky said. And Moriarty told Jehoda hand gestures weren't enough.
He's upset. I'm upset. The tensions were flying.
We were running out of time, I felt, and I was running out of gas.
Jehoda had been living a double life for 7 months. A single slip and he could easily end up dead. But then Rocky went out of town, and Jehoda was willing to try again. He asked Rocky's lieutenant, Bob Bellavia, another mob boss involved in one of the bookmaker murders, to come up to his apartment to talk business. Jehoda turned the conversation to the killing of Hal Smith and the list of clues about the bookmaker murders.
So what I did, I had a copy. I've seen it. Oh, okay, I see it.
So now I want to get him into the dance, and I do.
While assuring Jehoda that no incriminating evidence had been left behind, Bellavia made a crucial admission. He said he drove Smith's car the night of the murder. But Jehoda didn't forget about it. And a little later at the dining room table, he got an even more important admission.
that the independent bookmaker was killed in the kitchen of Jehoda's old house.
Except, I just want to know one thing. Was that guy any place but that kitchen? He never left the kitchen? No. Okay. Because I never looked, you know what I mean? I never went to the other... No, that was right there. No.
Bellavia not only confessed on tape, he also implicated Rocky and Felice and 2 others in the Hal Smith murder. But then Jehoda asked one question too many.
His eyes clicked like 2 blue ice cubes. I could see it. I was this close to him. I had taken him a little bit too far, and he knew it.
Jehoda was worried, but he'd already arranged another meeting with the same mobster for the next day. Moriarty ordered plenty of backup and told Jehoda to keep the appointment so the undercover operation could continue. But during the meeting, the mobster spotted the Fed surveillance cars and abruptly left. Jehoda believed his time as a mob informant was up. Exhausted and fearing for his life, he went to Moriarty.
He said, "Take me out of the game, coach. It's over." I says, "You're right, Bill. It's time to nut this." And we sent him on the road.
If he had been killed on your watch, how would you have felt?
I wouldn't be sitting here today. I would have had to quit. This was the most personal relationship I've ever established with someone outside my family.
3 months later, the feds moved in and arrested the Chicago crime syndicate's largest and most powerful street crew. What Moriarty and Jehoda accomplished had never been done before and may never be done again.
And we were able to charge, I think we had 20 defendants, which was basically the crew from the lower ranks up to the boss in Felice. And to be able to do that, in a sense, to take a tumor out and just remove it from the city, had a major impact.
So damning was the evidence that 13 mobsters would plead guilty to charges including racketeering, gambling, and tax evasion. In Felice, Bellavia, and 3 others stood trial in 1992. Jehoda would be on the stand for 21 days, testifying against his former associates.
He was the centerpiece of the case.
Before Bill Jehoda came forward, how many mobsters have been convicted of gangland slayings in Chicago?
I can't think of a one.
Rocky and Felice was found guilty of racketeering acts ranging from extortion to conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to 63 years. Bellavia received 30. 2 other mob bosses could also spend the rest of their lives in prison.
Bill Jehoda, in the annals of Chicago history, will be a person who started the end of the Chicago crime syndicate as we knew it.
And what was the sentence for Bill Jehoda, who pleaded guilty to racketeering, including conspiracy to commit murder? Well, the judge said she had never seen cooperation so extraordinary, and she set Jehoda free.
Nobody was more shocked than I was. I couldn't believe it.
Jehoda left the witness protection program the day he was freed, but lives a cautious life in a location known only to him. Jehoda says he talked to Dateline because he wanted the public to know about a case where the justice system worked, a case where federal agents found the evidence they needed and helped a troubled man find himself.
And I was mobbed up for a long time, and I was a pretty cold-blooded person. And slowly but surely, I kind of learned how to care about people again. And it's like I became the kind of decent person I used to be as a young man.
After turning against the mob, Jehoda became an opponent of legalized gambling. He says he learned that gambling isn't just entertainment, but dangerous and destructive. He has spoken before Congress as well as to college and community groups about the human cost of gambling.
Agreed. When we come back, my final thoughts. Here's my retrospective about this. I'm glad he brought this mob down, and I'm glad for 2 things. Number 1, he brought down the mob. Number 2, he made gambling illegal. Gambling is illegal in every state. I mean, gambling operations have been seized by the CCPD and in many other states. And states have gambling laws besides Texas. And as a final thought, I mean, you look at gambling laws by state. U.S. gambling laws, what is legal in every state? In Texas, online gambling. Commercial casinos. It's illegal. In Texas, it's illegal. Online gambling, real money casinos, state laws. When you look at state laws, like Alabama, commercial casinos, Arizona, Alaska, and Alabama, they're all illegal. Even California and Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Kentucky, Kansas, Minnesota, Montana, Nebraska, New Hampshire, North Carolina, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Oregon, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, Tennessee, Virginia, etc. Now online gambling, sports betting, just name a couple, state lottery, it's all illegal. But the lottery, state lottery, not illegal in Texas. Lottery is legal there. Online gambling. As for online gambling, that's illegal in Texas. Texas is one of the strictest states when it comes to gambling, and its laws can cover a wide variety of activities. So Texas is the only one that passes the laws. So that's my take on this. I got plenty more stories. Coming up on the first half Game Break Wednesday tomorrow morning, a story about marijuana. You're going to meet a man who has arthritis and someone who suggested marijuana in the first place. He could be jailed for up to a century in prison. But his medical case could improve. That's in the first half. That's on the first half of Wednesday. Then on the second half of Give Me a Break Wednesday, you're going to meet Jehovah's Witnesses. A whole second half about Jehovah's Witnesses. You're going to meet a woman who was being raped at her church. The Catholic Church says that if she went to the police, she would be expelled. Hear her side of the story, as well as the church's. Witness for the prosecution. That's on the second half. That's Give Me a Break for this. That's it for the second half of Give Me a Break for this Tuesday, going into Wednesday. We'll see you again tomorrow morning for the first half of Give Me a Break. And for Give Me a Break Wednesday. For all of us here at Give Me a Break and YouTube, hope you had a great day. For all of us here at Give Me a Break and YouTube, have a good night.